everybody, this is Perch. Why do people buy comics? Why do they collect and read for long periods of time? Well, I think there's an easy answer to that, but I also think it's one that a lot of people who are making comics on all different fronts, creators, publishers, they don't get. They've forgotten. It's one of the reasons why Stan Lee was so successful, even though, as many have pointed out, and people have pointed out continuously, even after he's died, about all of Stan Lee's faults, about how he was a pitch man and how he was not genuine, and he'd talk in kind of vague generalities, and he took credit for the details of other people's work at times. And, he shouldn't be revered. And yet people do like him. People can't help themselves not to like him. People who are casual comic fans, people who get excited about comics, put Stan Lee in front of them, they smile. Stan Lee seems like somebody who's there to pitch an idea to them. And that was Stan Lee. One of the things that I think a lot of people who are creating comics or publishers have forgotten in the midst of all this is exactly how much money people are spending. They're spending a lot. If you're, by the way, if you want to piss somebody off, if you want to quickly get under someone's skin, it's interesting the things that will do it. If you go onto Twitter and you suggest in one of these outrage trending topics that people's outrage is phony, that it's not actually real, that they're kind of putting it on for an act, people will unload on you. They won't be able to deal with it. They'd rather you attack, their opinion. They'd rather you, take the opposite opinion. If you go in and get in the middle of a Republican-Democrat war or a conservative-liberal war in Twitter and you say, I think you guys are all just phony and you're putting this on and none of you are actually serious about any of this, that will piss them off more than anything. If you go in and you suggest that, hey, Kickstarter and Indiegogo doesn't really matter, it's whatever gets your book out, you'd be surprised at people who get kind of religiously angrily at you. And it's not just the Kickstarter people. In the comments of one of my videos, people were suggesting it was coming from only one side. Au contraire. You should see some of the messages I got for even just suggesting that I'd put stuff on Kickstarter because I don't care. There's people who are adamant about this, not just to me, but to others. There's a war that's there. People cannot tolerate it. But another one, and I can't quite understand why. If you go to some of the higher level editors or some of the higher level creators and you make the comment, do you realize how much money I'm spending on your comics? I'm spending thousands of dollars on your comic. It irritates people. They don't like to hear that. They don't like to hear that as an example. Now, I'm not saying, anything like, it's just weird. By the way, to be fair, some people will hear that and say, well, thank you for supporting me. Others will get incensed about it. They don't like to think about the money. Why is that? Why is it that making a comment of how much you're investing and how much you're spending when comic books continue to rise their cover prices, that is a factor. It's a big one. I've never quite understood why price has this deep emotional, angry reaction to people, other than the people who are spending that kind of money and not getting their value for it. I completely understand why they're upset. But why is commenting that comics are too expensive for a while a problem? I don't remember. I think it was Jimmy Palmiotti, but it may have been, I think it was Jimmy, though, a while back, posted something of like, I think comics are pricing themselves out. And his peers went at him. I mean, aggressively went at him. It was baffling. It was weird to watch because it's one of those things that not really, I don't think that's a controversial statement. I think it's an obvious statement. When comics were 50 cents, 75 cents, people bought more of them. They were easier for kids to buy with pocket money. Today, when they're $3.99, $4.99, it's harder to do that. Seems like a problem. Doesn't seem like a deeply controversial statement. But despite all that, there are people who do spend that money. A lot of it. A lot of the comic collectors, the people who've been doing it for years and years and years, the people who, we keep getting told are aging out and don't matter, those people continue to dig deep into their wallets to buy comics. Why do they do it? Well, I think one of the clues to why they do it is just basic buying habits. It's been interesting to me to see the reaction to those innovation curve videos I've been doing, and people seem to like them. I'm a little surprised because I think it's kind of, pretty detailed, nerdy business talk, but I appreciate that people like it. I came to the conclusion, though, I had this kind of revelation. It's not the nerdy business aspect of it. It's the fact that I think those videos hit upon something kind of fundamental that speaks to people that they can recognize within themselves. And it's simply this. When you buy a product, when you buy whether it's a TV or a phone or a car or a comic, you're buying it for lack of a better word, for emotional reasons. You're buying it for belief. You're not buying it for details. When you buy a copy of Superman, what you're hoping for, what you're thinking, is the adventure, the story you're going to get, the experience you're about to receive, the idea of being able to see Superman tackle some unbeatable odds and come out on top. You're buying it for a dream. You're buying it for a hope. You're buying it for a feeling. You're buying it for a bunch of intangible things. Have you ever gone into a store and you're trying to decide between two products and you're like, I think this one just feels better? Why do you say feels? That doesn't make any sense. If you're buying a TV, what do you mean feels? But I guarantee almost everybody who's listening to this has had that experience. They've gone in and they bought things with their gut, not their brain. Okay, if that's true, then why is it that so many comics, why is it so many projects, why is it so many properties? Why is it that they promote using, data or features or stats? People don't buy things for that reason. And I think this is one of the big factors of why a lot of these big press releases, a lot of these things like, hey, Iceman is gay. Now Tim Drake is gay. Now, John Kent is gay. Well, if you look at the sales of these books, we obviously don't know the reaction to John Kent. That one probably has the best chance of doing well because it is branded Superman. It does have Tom Taylor. It does have a more notable artist. The other books didn't have those things. They were tucked away in an anthology or, no shade to Cena Grace, but he's not a world-renowned writer that everybody knows. And Tom Taylor does have that position at this point where he's well known. They put a higher profile artist on Tom Taylor's book than they did Cena Grace's book. That's going to help. So I think the sales will be higher. But for those experiments, for those books, even despite the press release, despite all of that, people didn't really buy it. Is it because the comic industry is filled with homophobes who wouldn't pay for it? I don't think so. I know some of the detractors are making that claim. Oh, it was all the cis people who tanked it. Not really. I think the reason why it got tanked is because it was selling a comic based on data. It was selling a comic based on a point. The point was, hey, the main character is gay. It wasn't, here is what you're going to get. Here's the adventure you're going to have. Here is the feeling you're going to have in this comic. Here's the journey, the epic. It wasn't any of that. It was sold on a surface trait. It was sold on a detail. This is really no different than if you've watched kind of over the years. One of the best examples of what you see comics doing today that we've seen fail in the past is when the first Xbox came out. Microsoft's going up against Sony. The PlayStation is an established console. It's got a lot of products behind it. Microsoft's coming out, and they're very proud of their Xbox. They spent a lot of time on it. They got some first-party games. They feel like they have the best shooter out there with Halo and everything else, and they're excited. How did they sell that box? Well, they told you. Graphics are really awesome. The hard drive is great. Disk speed is good. Processors, but the processors are badass in this thing. They sold features. Well, guess what? Nobody cared. The initial Xbox launch did not do well. It wasn't until Microsoft completely scrapped what they were doing, went back to the drawing board, and started selling the Xbox as, hey, the experience of playing Halo. Hey, you'll get friends together with you with Xbox Live, and you can enjoy this stuff as a group. You can have these adventures together. It wasn't until they started talking about the feelings, it wasn't until they started talking about kind of the emotion and the adventure of what they were getting that people took notice. When they were selling on data points, nobody cared. Even though the Xbox was a better piece of hardware than the PlayStation. Absolutely. That processor was better. Hard drive space, better. Hey, I think it had one of the first USB connectors. I mean, God, who doesn't want a USB connector? It's amazing. It was a better piece of hardware. People didn't buy it because you don't buy products that way. Well, with comics, when you say, hey, main character's gay, that's not a buying That's not something you buy for. Granted, some will say I want that. Some speculators will come and say I want the comic book that features the first gay character. As Superman's gay, I got to get my hands on that as a collector. Sounds great, but it doesn't generate sales. And if you look at how comic books are sold lately, there's a lot of that. It's like, hey, this has this particular writer on it. Did you realize Bendis is coming? Bendis is coming, and he's on Superman. Who doesn't want to see Bendis come? That doesn't sound right. That's how it's sold. Unfortunately, what failed in the whole Bendis is coming approach was the experience Bendis was going to give you. Not advertised was the idea of, hey, Bendis is going to tap into some huge space adventure. Philip Kennedy Johnson's Superman is doing marginally better than Bendis's in the numbers. Why is that? Well, part of it may be because they sold it as a concept. Superman's going to go to Warworld. It's going to reveal things we haven't seen before. He's going to have a big fight, and we're going to get into the environment. That sells comics better. People know how to wrap their heads around that. They can imagine the feeling. They can imagine the adventure they're going to get. They're not told, hey, Bendis, and then left to their own devices. That's how comics sell. When Jonathan Hickman came on to X-Men, there were certainly people excited for Hickman. But you talk to any comic store, and what happens is that it wasn't until the early buzz started coming out around Hickman's run that the status quo was getting changed, that there was some major shifts to Moira, that it was opening up this whole new world. That's what ignited people's imaginations. Not, hey, Hickman's on this. Not even when the new books came out and they announced it's like, hey, Teenie Howard, hey, Vita Ayala, hey, Ben Percy, that stuff didn't move the needle. It continues to not move the needle. If you look at all the X books and the additional launches and the stuff that's come out, what are the titles that have done the best and had the best critical acclaim and actually got some momentum? Well, Hellions did. What was unique about Hellions? Quick, who wrote it? Do you know? Marvel did promote the writer of Hellions, but they did not. They promoted more the concept. Because they promoted more the concept, more people got attached to it. They were able to say, this is exciting to me. But you look at how Marvel and DC promote a lot of the books, it's about a lot of details. When I see Kickstarters or Indiegogo projects, crowdfunded books that fail, one of the reasons why a lot of them fail is they promote the things that don't really matter. Hey, this book has pages. Hey, this book has a variant cover that, is variant. That's how a lot of the stuff is promoted. Those projects almost never sell. The ones that do well promote the adventure you're going to get, promote the idea, promote the concept, promote the story. They give you that imagination. It's no different than going in and buying a TV and being faced with two types of TVs. One that tells you, hey, this has 8K pixels. It's got cool black technology that is really impressive in terms of the depth of the black tones, and the light tones are going to be, it's going to be really impressive for you to see. It weighs less. That's one TV. The other one says, imagine being immersed into a world where you'll feel like you are in the jungle, you are at the beach. You'll feel like you can smell the seawater. I saw this TV ad where they were promoting it that way. You can smell the seawater. And what a ridiculous statement, if you think about it. Like, what? You're buying a TV. What do you mean smell the seawater? It doesn't make any sense. It's far more successful because you're igniting someone's imagination. You're getting somebody to believe. You're getting somebody to embrace the experience of what you're about to get. If you look at comics, if you look at what a lot of the big two do in terms of promoting their books, they downplay the experience. Instead, they promote just very, very surface level thing. It's a start of an arc. Who cares? The start of an arc is not something that gets anybody excited. Yes, if you put a big name creator on a book, it's a factor. It's interesting, but at the end of before somebody's going to put money down, they're going to want to know about the experience that you get. Some creators are successful because you kind of know what you're going to get. Donnie Cates is not successful because it's Donnie Cates. He's successful because you have a kind of a feeling of what the Donnie Cates brand is. You kind of have a feeling of what you're about to get with Donnie Cates. It's one of the reasons why when Donnie Cates has gone to the indies and done some of the other stuff he's done, it hasn't necessarily taken off. Why hasn't it taken off? Because you don't know what experience you're getting. It's hard to tell what brand you're getting. You're getting Donnie Cates. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. By contrast, look at James Tynion. James Tynion has managed to give a impression. They don't hype up Tynion as very much, not nearly as much as the others. Tynion brings a certain brand, a certain style. He's going to do something that maybe is a little bit more horror based. You know more of what you're getting with Tynion, and it sells well. When he goes to the indies, it you feel like you can jump on because you have a better sense of the experience you're going to get under Tynion. That's what he's managed to be able to capture. It's not easy, and it's not straightforward. But if you start to look up and down at the creators that have been successful and the ones that haven't, you start to get a lot of similarities of the ones that have been successful as selling an experience, selling imagination, selling the idea of what you're going to get. The ones that are unsuccessful tend to sell just their name, maybe some very basic level things. I'm watching Marvel and DC increasingly talk about this is going to have a backup story. Okay, great. What does that mean? Look at a lot of the DC launches that they did coming out of Future State. A lot of them had backup stories. This comic has a backup story by Matt Rosenberg. So what? What's it about? How's my imagination supposed to work when you tell me I'm getting a backup story by Rosenberg? It doesn't mean anything. Even Ram V on Justice League, he's doing the Justice League Dark stories, which people seem to like who are reading it. But they're not getting much value. It's just Ram V, Justice League Dark story. All right. Is it suspenseful? Horrific? Is it what is going on there that causes me to want to buy the comic? What's going on there to ignite the imagination? Going back to that innovation curve for a minute, the people at the beginning, the early adopters, they're the people who will just buy the comic, regardless. They're collectors. They're just going to buy it. Some of those people will go, I'll buy Bendis. Sure, Bendis, I'll buy Bendis. You can certainly sell to those people, and I think the current comic market is pretty tapped out with that early adopter market. It's not reaching the mainstream. One of the reasons it's not reaching the mainstream is because they're not selling the idea, the experience, the adventure, the imagination of what you're going to get. They're selling surface level traits. People don't buy that way. Whether it's food, whether it's electronics, whether it's cars, whether it's comics, people don't buy based on stats. Some of the early adopters will. That's not a successful market. Something to think about. It's weird to see so many people going in the opposite direction. Thanks for listening.